Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Dear panelists, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Olatunji Yusuf from the Islamic Development Bank, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to the ISDB Group Pavilion, and more importantly, to this very vital side event that we're having here today. Let me begin by expressing our heartfelt thanks to Guidehouse, the main host of this event, which we are partnering with you, and we're happy to have you in our pavilion. And more importantly, the cohort of speakers that we're having for this particular session. So we're pleased to actually have you here today. Personally, I feel very honored to be giving the welcome address for this important session that is titled Catalyzing the Sustainable Cooling Shift and Looking at Doubling Climate Benefit. According to the IPCC report, Assessment Report 6, which was released earlier this year, it actually states that with just 1.1 degrees Celsius of warming, climate change is already causing widespread disruption in every region of the world. Global warming is having significant implications for critical systems including food security, water, increasing incidence of heat-related mortality, increased poverty, as well as other challenges that are associated with development, which are at the heart of what the Islamic Development Bank actually does. In fact, the report actually estimates that in the next decade to come, that climate change will actually drive between 30 to 130 million people into extreme poverty. And the report actually also clarifies and says that even at the rate that we're going, even if we decide to stop emissions today, the impacts are already here. And these are the likely impact that countries, particularly those in marginal and critical zones of the world like the MENA region, would typically face. Specifically, when you look at the MENA region, temperature is actually set to rise more than half a degree Celsius per decade, meaning that by the mid of this century, the MENA region could actually be 4 degrees warmer than it is today. This makes the region even much more vulnerable to the threat of climate change. So, why is this so important? Because we do know that what a warmer world will actually generate, it will actually bring about the need for things that were never, and before now, were never anticipated. A typical example of those will be things around cooling. The demand for cooling would actually go to the point that has ever been experienced, particularly in the MENA region. But then beyond that, we would anticipate that in the decades ahead, that cooling will no longer just be, cooling will become a necessity and will not be a luxury as we have it today, where it's only the rich that get to use those cooling systems that we have. But then there comes the issues around equity and comes the issue around fairness on how people get access to some of these solutions. We do know for sure that today, when you look at some of the cooling systems that we have, the conventional cooling system, whether it's refrigerators, whether it's air conditioners, whether it's industrial chillers, that they account for about 10% of the total global emissions, which is quite high, meaning that we cannot just go with business as usual when it comes to cooling. We need to talk about sustainable cooling. And this is why today's session is actually very, very crucial and important. It's very important because it's not just going to affect the industry when it comes to technology, but it's also going to affect things around the way we manage our food security, storage system. It's going to talk about health. It's going to talk about how we actually design our cities, our houses. So it's going to affect every aspect of our lives. But then, the thing is, are there solutions that can actually help us actually address some of these emerging needs that we would face in the region? The question is, yes, they are. But for these solutions to be available for everyone, the right policies must be at place. The right financing would have to be at place. The right technology will have to be at place. And it is the interplay of these elements that will drive the right market. And this is why today's session is actually very important, particularly for us at the Islamic Development Bank. We do recognize these emerging trends. And this is why we have put forward an action plan that would help us actually address some of these emerging issues. As a bank, we have committed 35% of our total financing by 2025 to actually address climate action, including within the region. But beyond that is also that as a bank, we have committed by end of 2023, 100% of our total financing would be Paris aligned, meaning that they would actually be designed in a way and manner that the objectives of the Paris Agreement will be enshrined in them. And we do anticipate that by doing this, more investment can be crowded into sectors like the cooling, sustainable cooling activities. So we very much look forward to the conversation that we'll be having here today, where we'll be able to also get insight from some of the experts that have worked in this space within the region, and also to share insight on some of those financing opportunities that the bank actually provide alongside other financial institutions that we could actually benefit from. So without further ado, I'm just going to give the floor back to our colleagues from Guidehouse to commence the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Yusuf, for your very moving and informative speech. This sets the landscape for our session very nicely, because indeed we are going to be talking about the interplay between several sectors, the cross-functional nature of cooling, and how CoolUp is addressing these challenges. My name is Neshan Sürmeli. I'm an Associate Director at Guidehouse. Guidehouse is the leading organization for the CoolUp program that I will try to give a brief overview, and then we have very valuable speakers today with us, and we will move into their insights that reflects the implementation examples from CoolUp partner countries and international examples as well. So our program called CoolUp is focusing on upscaling sustainable cooling in the MENA region. The program started in end of 2020, and it's going to continue until beginning of 2027, which gives us quite substantial time to see how the technological transformation can be accelerated. By sustainable cooling, what we mean is not only energy efficiency, but also the solutions that can function in the lack of synthetic refrigerants that are depleting the ozone layer and creating climate impacts, negative climate impacts. Additionally, we want to promote technologies that are readily integratable to renewable energy. So with these three pillars, we are focusing on technologies which work with natural refrigerants or not-in-kind technologies such as district cooling or solar cooling. As Mr. Yusuf has nicely outlined, cooling demand is increasing, and that's a service that we take as a privilege and without recognizing. For example, when we move in the COP buildings, you realize how it is essential for habitable environments, for us, to humans, to function, to come together, to live in our buildings. So we need to make sure that while we meet the demand, the growing demand, we don't create more impact on the climate, and we promote the shift to the technologies that are cleaner and more sustainable. And this needed immediately. So with this perspective, supported by the International Climate Initiative of the German government, we have established a large consortium. Led by Guidehouse, we have several experts in the area who are working on the different levels of cooling and refrigeration. And we have today here our partner countries represented by our three speakers, and I will be happy to give the floor to them later in the presentation. As said, cooling is a cross-cutting sector, and it needs handling by policy, finance, as well as the technological solutions. It can't be handled by only working on these alone. It needs synergies to be achieved in the stakeholders, but also among the decision makers. And of course, it starts with, first of all, reducing the demand with passive measures, which are already in the traditional architecture in the MENA region, to bring this knowledge back, and then work on air conditioning and refrigeration opportunities that do not harm environment at any level, neither for energy consumption nor for the direct emissions via refrigerants. So with this, I will be happy to give the floor to Mr. Veysel Selimoğlu to give insights on the implementation of the Cool-Up program in Turkey. And Mr. Selimoğlu, floor is yours.
Lazım değil zaten. Hi everybody. Honorable moderator Ms. Sürmeli and distinguished participants and dear participants. It's an honor to be part of this special organization in COP27, which is extremely important to our future. I would like to express my gratitude to the Islamic Development Bank as an organizer of this meeting and the government of the Arab Republic of Egypt for their hospitality in Sharm el-Sheikh. The Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer is known throughout the world as the most successful multilateral environmental agreement. The key to this success is the valuable joint effort of all parties to the protocol and the strong cooperations between these parties. The Montreal Protocol has proven that global cooperation can lead to successful outcomes in protecting life on Earth. Turkey has always been present in contributing to these joint efforts from the very beginning. After ratification of the Paris Agreement, tackling climate change has gained real momentum in Turkey. First, the Climate Change Office Turkey was established as a subsidiary of the Ministry of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change. Public participations followed, starting on the 6th of December 2021 with a stakeholder engagement meeting which was held with the participation of approximately 300 representatives from the public and private sectors, NGOs and academia. In addition, the first Climate Council was organized by the Climate Change Office of Turkey and held in Konya in February 2022. It gained a huge momentum with around 1,500 stakeholders involved in various public and private sectors, research, institutions, NGOs and countries' youth. The Climate Council was finalized with 217 decisions, 76 of which were prioritized. The Climate Change Office is the national focal point of the Montreal Protocol and carries out the national and international coordination task regarding both ozone-depleting substances and F-gases. Our country is among the successful countries in the implementation of this protocol. In this context, measures related to global climate change and the depletion of the ozone layer are under the responsibility of the Climate Change Office. And I would like to state that Turkey is grateful to promote the transition to low GWP or natural refrigerants with the approval of the Kigali Amendment. Turkey fulfilling its commitment to fully phase out HCFCs by 2025. Ratifying the Kigali Amendment in the last year, we are also committed to freezing our HFC consumption in 2024 and then accelerating the phase down schedule in line with Article 5 countries. Noting Article 4B of the Montreal Protocol, Turkey established a licensing system for the import and export of HFCs per shipment, is planning to implement this system at the start of next year. Our efforts continue to enable us to fulfill our commitments to prevent ozone layer depletion while adapting to climate change in collaboration with other countries. As is known within the scope of the Vienna Convention and the Montreal Protocol, the goal is to introduce and promote natural refrigerants as well as energy efficient appliances in the F-gas sector. In the context of this goal, as Turkey, we have worked to align our regulations with the EU regulation and also the Kigali Amendment. In the 2018, the first bylaw controlling emissions from fluorinated GHGs, entitled Regulation on Fluorinated Greenhouse Gases, was published in Turkey and has since been revised only once in 2022. Prior to this revision, the fluorinated GHG regulation did not fully reflect the Kigali Amendment provisions and the EU Directive 517/2014. Upon revision and within the scope of compliance studies, the version of the regulation in effect today fully complies with the EU's Directive 517/2014 and the Kigali Amendment. Turkey is committed to reducing HFC consumption by 2024. Thanks to the important export licensing system, as of 2024, F-gas consumption will be monitored over a determined quota application. Thus, we will fulfill our obligations within the Kigali Amendment phase-down schedule. With the Kigali Amendment, the consumption of fluorinated GHGs will be gradually reduced from 2024, and we aim to achieve an 80% reduction in CO2 equivalent by 2045. After ratification of Paris Agreement, the actions taken in order to adapt climate change have gained a real momentum in Turkey. As a developing country, Turkey has signed $3.2 billion memorandum of understanding in order to boost the transition in every sector. Turkey is not only focused on its economic development, but also gives special attention to just transitions areas from immigration to human rights to green jobs, as well as increasing female employment rates so on. On September 2015, the Republic of Turkey submitted its intended nationally determined contribution to UNFCCC towards achieving the ultimate objective of the convention, which is, in our case, reducing GHG emissions by up to 21% by 2030. Turkey's NDC will also be revised parallel with long-term strategy. These two documents are crucial and strategic policy documents for the government of Turkey, where the responsible body is the Ministry of Environment, Urbanization and Climate Change. Moreover, our LTS provides us with a pathway to whole society transformation, a vital link between shorter-term NDCs and long-term objectives of the Paris Agreement. And because of the 30-year time horizon, these strategies offer many other benefits, including guiding countries to avoid costly investments in high emissions technologies, supporting just and equitable transitions, promoting technological innovation, planning for new sustainable infrastructure in light for future climate risk, and sending early and predictable signals to investors about envisaged long-term societal changes. Global climate change efforts are always focused for Turkey at a national level and supported by various projects with different partners. These efforts are now also supported by the COOL-UP program, a program focusing on upscaling sustainable cooling. Within the COOL-UP program, the Realizing Opportunities for Sustainable Cooling Conference was held in Istanbul on the 28th and 29th of September this year. attended by approximately 200 representatives from Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, and the MENA region. The conference hosted discussions on ways to incorporate sustainable cooling solutions into the climate agendas of participating countries through a series of parallel panel sessions, workshops, bilateral and group meetings. The first regional conference facilitated cross-border exchange and fostered relationships around reducing cooling demands in the region. There were several opportunities to interact with a wide variety of cooling sector stakeholders, including high-level policy officials from CoolUp partner countries, industry leaders, cooling association members, and sustainable financing professionals. Participants left the conference equipped to accelerate the transition to sustainable refrigeration and air conditioning technologies throughout the region. I believe this event marked a promising start in terms of sharing of experiences, outlooks, and opinions. Such occasions offered by the CoolUp program provide a great opportunity to consider what we have achieved so far together with our partners and to reflect on this perspective moving forward. Distinguished participants, all of us are gathered here today at COP27 to sustain further cooperation. We need to proceed with bold actions that lead to greater breakthroughs. As always, we hope that the fruitful discussions here will yield beneficial outcomes for us all. We hope that our common responsibilities will be shaped by everyone on the way to net zero. Together, we can mitigate and adapt to climate change while protecting the ozone layer, and in the end, our relentless efforts will lead to the sustainable developments of all countries. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Selimoğlu, for a very nice overview of the regulatory status in Turkey. I will now invite Dr. Mohamed Salhin. Dr. Mohamed Salhin is the CEO of IDG, and he is the CoolUp country partner for Egypt. Will you?
Hello, good evening. Thanks, Dr. Nation, for the introduction and for the moderation, and thanks to the honorable panelists with us and to the guest as well. Briefly, today we'll be presenting. My name is Mohamed Salhin, as Nation just said. Besides being the chairperson of IDG as the implementing partner of CoolUp in Egypt, I'm also the head of urban planning department at Ain Shams University in Cairo. Briefly, we're going to be presenting to you what happened in CoolUp during the last year and a half, almost in Egypt, with the hope of setting the floor on seeing or expecting what are we having in the coming 4 years. We started the project from looking at the main starting points. Egypt, within its sustainability plan for 2030, we have a vision for energy section that aims at reducing the intensity of energy consumption. Also, Egypt is committed to Montreal Protocol and in the process of ratifying the Kigali Amendment. We have a commitment also in Egypt to cooling demand reduction, and we have a responsibility for HVAC industry to replace the GWP, HFC refrigerants. And as an objective set by Egypt, by 2030, we should have phased out all polluting refrigerants, and we would consider the baseline of 2024 as a baseline from which we would be moving towards the process of phasing out the HFCs. Okay, so we started the project with an extensive stakeholder mapping of all actors within the landscape of cooling business in Egypt, and we categorized that into 3 categories of finance sector, public sector, and industry. And within each of these, we also looked at the sub-sectors. So within the public sector, we differentiated between the ministries, the government agencies, and the international agencies active in the landscape in Egypt. Within the finance sector, we also looked at the local banking, the financial institutions, but also at international financial institutions. The reason for that split is to understand, or because we understand the difference in the mandate and the background of each. For the industry, we looked at NGOs and associations active in the cooling analysis and cooling business in Egypt, at the engineering and technology provider, whether they are consultants or whether they are academia. Looked at suppliers and traders as representative of the current status of the industry in Egypt, and the manufacturers as those big companies that actually producing most of the equipment for the cooling business in Egypt. By the way, I just pushed one button, so one push. So it's either sensitive or it's time conscious. Looking at, no, but I think, yeah. As Dr. Youssef rightly mentioned at the beginning, we are looking in the CoolUp project into the 3 pillars of making a change. One which is a policy pillar, the other one is the technology, and the third is finance. And here we're briefly going to present to you what are the main takeaways that we found from the first phase of the project, understanding the situation. So when it comes to the policy, we identified certain actions that need to be taken further and supported by the project. And needless to say that the project is being run and managed by IDG, but in very close cooperation with the national partner, which is the Ministry of Environment and the WEAA. So they are hand in hand developing these actions with us and even reviewing and approving each and every step that we're moving through. So among the actions that we identified to be important for the next phase is the introduction of the National Action Plan, using the Coal Coalition NCAP methodology. We also looking at a very important action related to building codes. So we have many of the building codes with HPRC, the Housing and Building Research Center, but some of them are not activated and some of them are yet to be enforced and supported when it comes to implementation. And that's one action that we're working on. A third action is upscaling the MEPS, minimum energy performance standards, to include commercial rack applications and to support the enforcement of these MEPS in the landscape. Last but not least, we have another identified action supporting the preparation of natural F-gas regulation, because until now we don't have an in-hand or a workable regulation for the use of natural refrigerants. And later within the pillar of technology, we understand why is that a bit of a hurdle. Parallel to all of that, we're working on raising the awareness and building the capacity of the landscape. So it's not only building capacity of authorities or people in decision, but also people in the industry, people in the academia, people in the business of designing, planning, implementation, maintenance of the cooling business. Recommendations that came from the technology, and here we differentiate between 2 types. One type is the technologies that have been proven and it's mature enough to be implemented and rolled over, and others that still require some further improvement or tweaking in order to get it implementable. So for the air conditioning, and these are the two sections that we're working on, the air conditioning and the refrigeration. For the air conditioning, we need to introduce, there is an importance to introduce monitoring solutions in order to monitor the air conditioning system and the baseline. We don't have a clear baseline data for the air conditioning situation in Egypt. We need also to look at central hydrocarbon-based chiller solutions. District cooling is growing in Egypt and has proven to be a good solution in many businesses, yet the use of hydrocarbon-based chillers is not yet at massive or extensively used, and although it's being proved to be successful, but need to encourage that a bit. What needs a bit of more development and understanding within the Egyptian context is the residential standalone air conditioning systems, and whether they will be able to introduce the ones with the hydrocarbon as a refrigerant. But of course, the part that I said that requires some tweaking is how we manage the flammability of the refrigerants used in that. It's not only about managing the domestic condition, but also the part on servicing these and managing how the end user dealing with it. Last but not least, on the air conditioning side, the sustainable district cooling and trying to introduce chillers that use more natural solutions like solar and water into the power consumption of these units. On the commercial, again, we have the monitoring. We have success stories when it comes to the use of supermarket solutions for subcritical CO2 and hydrocarbon refrigerants. Again, introducing hydrocarbon residential commercial service sector development, and last but not least, the manufacturing concept for small manufacturers. What is promising is we have some good practices that we identified within the first phase of the project. There are many absorption chiller district cooling projects. 10 years ago, there were not as many, which shows that the market is more aware now of the savings that's happening on that side. We have companies moving their compressor system to a more sustainable solutions, moving from R134A to R600. Yet they are still not approved yet, but at least it shows the intention in the market. We have solar cooling projects, so many commercial projects are introducing the PV panels in order to develop or generate some of their energy consumption on campus, not directly fed into the cooling, but at least they are aware of the high bill that they are getting from the cooling component within the system, and the solar is subsidizing that. There are some initiatives on using ammonia refrigeration plants, yet they are mainly in the big industrial complexes. And then we have on a passive measure, we have Al Bahariya village, which is a good example of how passive measures could also help in reducing the demand on cooling. So on the side of passive rather than on the active, and trying to reduce the demand after being generated. In brief, when it comes to the financing, we identified the three ways in which we can intervene. Either we're working on the technology development, which is usually a high risk and would require a grant finance, or moving to a pilot level demo in which we have a proven technology but not yet implemented on a wider scale or a practical scale, and that need to be implemented. It's a mid-risk because you take a proven technology to be applied in a pilot, but yet you have a finance on a soft term. So if you have a developer or a project owner would like to go into that piloting, it's good because it's a win-win situation for us, for the financing sector. The financing, they are opening a new channel for their market for rollover, proving the concept for the pilot to be pioneer in applying that. It helps their image, and for us to prove the concept that is being initially developed technically. And finally, once the pilots are successful, you then take it to the market level and the commercialization, and then it's active for debt finance, and commercial banks are then the players for that pillar. Within the first phase of CoolUp, we have issued several publications out of that, together with our partners CoolUp and other consortium members. So we had the first one on the cooling status, or the status of the cooling sector in Egypt. We had another one on the technical solution that would be suitable for the sustainable cooling in Egypt. We had a third one on analyzing the regulatory situation and identifying the gaps, the shortcomings, the challenges, and we're glad to have that, in partnership with the WEAA. So the actual agency in Egypt, the national agencies that's in charge of that, they endorse the outputs of all of these publications. The last one that is now still in its final phase of review is the status of the financial market when it comes to the cooling business in Egypt, and I think it will be out in a week or so. I would not take much, but we have also looked at examples from projects in Egypt that would use passive and also active solutions, and closely with project developers, project owners, consultants, we look at these facts and figures and try to understand what were the challenges, how we can take it further, and how the next 4 years of the lifetime of the project could be helpful in taking the sustainable cooling for a better situation, inshallah. Thank you very much, and I hope I was not too long.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salhin. Yes, we have several publications in Egypt which we hope that will help also all decision makers, public and private, to use for the further development in 2023 and 2024. Thanks for your all contributions, Dr. Salhin. And now I would like to invite Mrs. Savsan Bavaresh, energy efficiency expert from Royal Science Society of Jordan, to give an overview of CoolUp implementation in Jordan in last 2 years of the program.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to have this opportunity at COP27 to talk about Jordan highlights development in transition to sustainable cooling. I will start by talking about why sustainable cooling matters. By 2050, an additional 3 billion air conditioners are expected to have been installed around the world. This will increase the cooling demand and requires electricity grids to supply these units to operate. Also, a lack of access to sustainable cooling and cold chains threatens to put sustainable development goal of zero hunger out of reach and prevent the ability of agricultural economies to grow sustainably. Refrigerants also can leak out of air conditioners both during use and more commonly when ACs are discarded. Cooling equipment is currently responsible for more than 7% of all global greenhouse gases emissions, and without switching to clean and sustainable cooling technologies and a full renewable energy transition, the cooling sector's greenhouse gases would double by 2050. For Jordan, we have a lot of challenges. Okay. Next. 92% of Jordan energy needs are imported. Over 80% of Jordan greenhouse gases emissions comes from the energy sector, from electricity generation, transportation sector, and waste sector. Cooling demand is expected to increase with the increased population growth rate, economic activity, and other factors. Jordan has the challenge to maintain the stability of the grid while accommodating different sources of energy, renewable energy and non-renewable sources. Jordan government has published in 2022 Jordan's economic modernization vision, which centers on the slogan of a better future and is based on two strategic pillars: accelerated growth through unleashing Jordan's full economic potential, improved quality of life for all citizens, while sustainability is key to this future vision. Through the vision and its roadmap, Jordan will continue its efforts to tackle needs related to climate change, including delivering on the Paris Agreement. Jordan has raised its NDC target to 31% for microeconomic greenhouse gases emissions reduction, and now the updated reduction target, 31% of the total national greenhouse gases emissions, is based on a combination of national policies, programs, and actions, as well as international support and finance, and reflects the highest possible ambition for climate action. Oh, sorry. What is now? Okay. Regarding international protocols, Jordan is a party to the Vienna Convention for the production of the ozone layer and ratified the convention in 1989. In the same year, Jordan ratified the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. In 2019, the government of Jordan ratified Kigali Amendment to Montreal Protocol. Jordan is party of the new FCCC, which were ratified in 1993, and ratified the Paris Agreement in 2016 and committed to its provisions. As the HFCs are powerful greenhouse gases and thus contribute to climate change, the government includes the reduction of consumption of HFCs as a mitigation measure in the latest NDC. Okay. Okay. What's happening? Okay. Regarding national plan, Jordan was successful in phasing out CFCs consumption through the national ODS phase-out plan. CFCs phased out in 2007 in Jordan. Jordan could achieve 70% of HCFCs phase out in 2021 according to implementing HCFCs phase out management plan, stage 1 and stage 2. The government is implementing a licensing and quota system for HCFC imports and exports, which was updated in 2016 to ensure effective control. Also, the National Energy Strategy 2020-23 aims to improve the energy efficiency to reach 9% of consumption by 2030, assuming the base year is 2018. We have a number of laws and bylaws also supporting sustainable cooling, also standard and technical regulations for energy labeling and eco-design. What is it? Okay, I have a problem now. Going back. Okay. Ministry of Environment National Ozone Unit is currently sets the policy agenda for tackling HCFC's consumption in HCFC using sectors in line with overall hydrochlorofluorocarbon phase-out management plan, and it's planning to phase out in these hydrochlorofluorocarbons by 2030. Also, the NOU is developing HFC phase-out strategy, also targeting the phasing down of HFCs. This HFC phase-down strategy will include replacement of high global warming potential gases with low global warming potential gases, combined with improvement in energy efficiency, improvement of facility insulation to reduce required air conditioning loads, banning open burning of municipal waste, and implement recycling and close incineration plants. Ensure long-distance gas pipelines are well maintained to minimize potential leaks. Regarding cool-up regulatory analysis recommendation, the National Cooling Strategy and the National Cooling Plan was recommended by Cool-Up program after we conducted the regulatory analysis report, And I would like to take this opportunity to ask to thank His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Al-Khashashne and Engineer Hiba Zriqat for her support and adopting the National Cooling Strategy and National Cooling Plan recommendation. This National Cooling Strategy and Plan will help Jordan in identifying pathways to integrate comprehensive actions addressing several SDGs that are closely interlinked with cooling, cleaner air, reducing food waste, improving health, and increasing productivity through improved access to cooling, reducing energy-related emissions from cooling aligned with plans related to emissions from refrigerant transition, and reducing emissions from refrigerant leakage. Cool Up project will support the development of this national cooling strategy and plan. Jordan is a pioneer in tackling global climate change. Jordan NDCs aim to achieve low carbon, climate resilient development. Therefore, it covers both the mitigation and adaptation development sectors. Jordan has made a significant knowledge contribution to the global climate change mitigation agenda and regional adaptation priorities through Jordan's comprehensive monitoring, reporting, and verification system. MRV system, owned by the Jordan Ministry of Environment, supports tracking and reporting progress in mitigating climate change impacts and its registry system for transacting carbon credits. The MRV and registry systems, supported by the Partnership of Market Readiness, are the first of their kind in a developing country. It supports the calculation of greenhouse gases emissions and emission reduction and records the financial support. MRV system operates at the national level, ministry level, sectoral level, and project level. It facilitates verification and validation of data and supports access to climate finance and enables suitable future carbon market-based instruments. In June 2022, the Central Bank of Jordan launched the work on the development of an integrated strategy to promote green finance in Jordan. The green finance strategy objective is to promote green finance and mitigate risk from climate change and reduce carbon emissions. The integrated green finance strategy will help in ensuring the sustainability of the energy sector in Jordan. Will help in attracting also climate financing and green financing. The green finance strategy under development is in collaboration with the banking and financial sector and other public and private sector stakeholders in cooperation with the World Bank Group. Cool Up program, we have published number of reports that's supporting the transition to sustainable cooling in Jordan. We have published the regulatory analysis report, and also we have published the cooling sector status report of Jordan, which provides analysis of the current market structure, trends, and insights on the refrigeration and air conditioning sector. Okay. Also, we have published a catalog for technical solutions for sustainable cooling, and we are currently in the process of publishing the finance market assessment and landscape for Jordan. Oh, what happened? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hassan, for giving an overview of the increasing ambitions in Jordan and what has Cool Up done so far. As soon as I get to the right slides, I will invite Mr. Brian Dean to give us an overview of what's happening on the international stage and the efforts from SE for All.
And I'll certainly have the challenge with this because I'm at the last slide, so let's see if I can do it slowly. So yeah, thanks for having me here. And I wanted to start out with a little bit of context to say why we look at sustainable cooling and at SE for all, sustainable energy for all. We think about it from the lack of access to this energy service that we all need. And in our Cooling for All program, we've developed this Chilling Prospects series, and you'll see that it's been run for a number of years. And we note that there's over 1 billion people that are at high risk due to a lack of access to cooling. And so when we think about it from that context, the very first thing is actually, these 3 billion new air conditioners. I mean, these are new air conditioners that are going into homes that can afford it. There's a large chunk of this population that can't even afford an air conditioner. They might be able to afford a fan. And so we think about the cooling needs a little bit very, very holistically. But you can see, the cooling excess risks, they're where you expect them to be across Latin America, Northern Africa in particular, Middle East, and over through Southern Asia. So, but in addition to those billion people that are at high risk, there's another 2.5 billion that are maybe the biggest risk in this region, which is that these are the ones that can start to afford air conditioning. But what are they affording? They're affording maybe the least efficient technology that's available on the market because it's the lowest cost. And so this is a different kind of risk. This is a climate risk that we have. And so we want to make sure that there are cooling options that are affordable and efficient, and obviously climate-friendly refrigerants being part of that story. So when we think about how we're going to tackle this problem, we think about it in this five-step approach. First, protect. We want to protect those people that have a lack of access to cooling, that are at high risk. And then we want to reduce the need for cooling. And that could be using things like nature-based solutions, reducing the urban heat island effect and all that, reducing the need for mechanical cooling. Shift, this is what CoolUp does a great job with, shifting away from refrigerants that are heavy pollutant, improving the efficiency of those technologies, and then working together, collaborating together to leverage the different capabilities that we all have. And when we look at the cooling needs themselves, we tackle them in 3 different categories. One is comfort and safety, so this is human-driven cooling. But we also look at food and nutrition, and also health, and you could say medicines, everything that goes along with healthcare. And so we bundle it into those 3. And then from a solutions perspective, and this is one of the things I want to talk about most, was we have technological solutions. We often think about those first. But there are also very often very good services solutions. So cooling as a service, as an example, there are solution options that are services out there. I'm really happy to see that the work that you are doing in the region, you're looking at the policies, you're putting the plans in place. This cooling policy solutions is fundamental when working globally. And then, of course, financial solutions. If we don't have the financial capability to transform and scale up the market, then we're not actually going to deliver on those policies. Some people say in some countries policies go to die. They're made, they're great, but if you don't have the finance, if you don't have the good technologies that are brought into the country, this financial one is obviously a key discussion here at COP27. So we like to think of this as a big matrix. There's all of these different needs for cooling, the different ways of tackling the problem, and then the solutions that can deliver on it. So this is my last slide, and I wanted to show this, and I know you can't necessarily read the bottom, so I'll read it out. But when looking at global best practices, we're often looking at, okay, what are the innovations out there, and who's actually working to get the business models together to deliver these solutions. So we've worked with a number of partners, and a number of our partners have worked on these challenges and competitions. that are helping to evolve markets. And I would love to see opportunities for working on these challenges in this region on other issues in the years ahead. The first one, the Million Cool Roofs Challenge. This was, well, we know that cool roofs are a great technology for reducing the need for cooling, but there was not a market for it. There was not a narrative behind it. There was not the cost-effective analysis behind it. This Million Cool Roof Challenge, if you look at the 10 countries where they tested out different cooling roof technologies and business models, you'll see that it works, you'll see the data, and that can be used to then roll it out in other countries. Similarly, in India, the Beep India program worked on a competition for external shading. Again, reducing the need for cooling. I've sort of lumped these into categories, you'll notice, but the external shading for buildings, again, reduces the need for that mechanical cooling. Now, once you get to mechanical cooling, the Global Cooling Prize worked on developing technologies that have 5 times less climate impact. So that's a combination of efficiency and refrigerant impacts. And there are proven technologies out there now that can actually achieve 5 times less climate impact. On the refrigeration and ice making side, the Chill Challenge went to innovate how low of a cost and how can you do off-grid refrigeration and ice making at a very, very, very low cost. So again, proven technologies there as well. Now at SC for All, we've run a series of youth challenges, and certainly would like to talk with the Cool Up program about in 2023, what can we do together? But in these youth challenges, we've had hundreds of proposals from youth that have brought new innovations to the market across the 3 pillars that we look at: the thermal comfort, food nutrition, and health. And so I think it's great to be putting money towards this innovation that will help change our markets in the future, and certainly great options for markets to take on. And in here at COP27, the one that you can't see at the bottom, is called Beat the Heat, Nature for Cool Cities Challenge. We're going to be launching that tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, just across the way in the Sustainable Energy for All Pavilion, the SDG 7 Pavilion. And in this challenge, we've got a playbook. We know how to bring nature to cities. We know how to reduce the urban heat island effect. We're challenging cities to take on this playbook and start to make their cities, make their urban environments more healthy for us as civilians in our cities to walk around, to live. It also, of course, reduces the need for cooling as well in our buildings. So we'll be launching this Nature for Cool Cities Challenge tomorrow with a number of partners, and hope that this can be something impactful in your cities where you live or where you work. So maybe I'll leave it there, and back to you, Nissan.
Thank you very much. We'll definitely be there to see the launch of the new challenge, and looking forward to cooperate also in the future. I know we're at the end of our dedicated time. I would like to thank all our speakers and our host, Islamic Development Bank, once again. I don't want to outlive our welcome, but I still want to invite questions. As I understand, there are a couple of questions from the audience, if that's okay. Mr. Yusuf, can we still go on with the questions? Yeah. Yes, please, can we check that? Please.
Hi, can you hear me? Wow,
Yes.
this works. Great. Thank you for this great panel, and I think the examples that we heard from Turkey, from Jordan, and from Egypt bring to us the fundamental question that we have had in decarbonizing cooling for several years. As context, I'm Avipsa Mahapatra from the Environmental Investigation Agency, and we have been working on reducing the impact of coolants, both on the ozone layer and on climate, for the last 20 plus years of the Montreal Protocol. And what I'm hearing right now is, Jordan, Egypt, and the countries in the region are, phasing down HCFCs, are looking at plans to phase out HFCs. But what I'm missing right now is what is the plan to leapfrog and not go sort of continue on this treadmill of chemicals that need to be changed, in another 5 to 10 years. Particularly, I cannot get any closer. Particularly, in a hot country like Egypt, for example, where most of the refrigerants are imported, I was wondering what are the coolants in this conference itself. And is that a missed opportunity, for example, to showcase innovative solutions that could leapfrog HFCs just in this conference center itself? So I'll pause there and then go from there.
Thank you very much. Yes, very valid questions. Is there anyone who would like to take it up, maybe? Okay, we take all the questions first.
Okay. My name is Samyullah Khan. I'm from a private sector in Dubai. And we are into real estate, we are into buildings, manufacturing, multiple businesses. Our major challenge has been the power consumed by the cooling, because 70% of our electricity bill goes on air conditioning. And what we have done as a company to reduce our carbon footprint is collaborate with the company in Masdar and come up with a solution where we are able to capture the carbon dioxide from the built environment, removing all the CO2, VOC, humidity, and recirculating the air inside the building. For the last 9 years or 9 months, we have eliminated the FHU. We have maintained better indoor air quality than what was before, eliminated the sick building syndrome, and saved 30 to 40% of our electricity bill. Now, what I'd like to know from IDB and the entities here is, how can you help us scale this up forward? Like Dr. Mohammed has mentioned, we have designed it, we have manufactured it, we have prototyped it, we have implemented it in one of our buildings. And we would like your guidance on how this technology can be taken forward. And the payback, what we have achieved in Dubai, is 2 to 3 years. In terms of electricity saving, I'm not talking about carbon credits because we are capturing carbon dioxide. I'm not talking about the benefits of health. I'm not talking about savings in terms of maintenance, which are all part of it. Directly based on electricity bill reduction, 30 to 40% we have saved. So how can we collaborate, and what would be your advice to take this radical innovation forward?
Thank you very much. Really great to hear. There's also real life solutions already, and would like to comment on it. But I will give the opportunity to Dr. Mohammed Salhin if you want to take the floor.
Thank you very much. I think I can try to answer both questions together. I completely see where you're coming from. It would have been a nice branding of the COP if the cooling system now is using natural refrigerants and so on and so forth. But yet, in my opinion, as the implementer of CoolUp in Egypt, that would not be the main objective of CoolUp, because the objective for us is to get that to a practical, empirical rollover situation, not as a trend-setting situation. This is why we're trying to combine the policy, so that you have the policy landscape, the regulatory landscape, all the conditions from that side, also the financial, not only for financing, but the economies of it, convincing the developer, the end user, the manufacturer, the service provider, not convincing with words, but with calculations, that this is good for the business. Possibly to answer that question, and also to give an example on that one, the technology solution that we have proposed, we're now discussing with several entities in which we will taking it to a pilot project phase. And in pilot, we mean that we're going to be implementing it in a project in which we can then have the real measurement that would convince further developers, further project owners to adopt that. And we keep on getting the example of the LED lighting 20 years ago, that once you had an initiative and it's been proven for 1 or 2 years, then the whole country followed So it's not only by trending it, but by providing a solution that prove workable and sustainable when it comes to maintenance and so on, and embedded into the landscape of design, building, and so on. So if you take that project to a real world, not within, Masdar is a great place to innovate, but you need to take it to a real project site, to a resort, to a business, to an office building that is commercially operating, not in a way that is presenting good solutions, but that shows that we're real, the solution is practical, and it's implementable at wider scale.
It's already implemented in a hotel in Dubai, a four-star hotel.
Then you need some good statistics, some measurement, and some good promoter. You
Yes.
don't need any further support in that.
So how can we
I think-
connect with Cool Up?
I think we can definitely look into it because we are now finalizing the technological solutions and looking into options. What innovative solutions can be replicated in the region? So we would
Absolutely.
be happy to get in touch and
We have actually won the UAE Innovates Award, Innovation Arabia Award, Green Building Council Award for Mina, everything in the last 3 months.
Wonderful.
So possibly you need Cool Up to support you. To take it
Absolutely.
further.
That was the reason I wanted to know from you how we can leverage on Cool Up.
And possibly this is the reason why we're here.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I would like to comment on the first question about leapfrogging because that's particularly important for Cool-Up. Indeed, what we want to achieve is not only to follow the requirements of the Kigali Amendment and the timeline of the Kigali Amendment, but make sure that countries are aware that there is potential by moving into natural refrigerants immediately, and there is a lot of saving potential if they do that now. So instead of waiting for another 10 to 15 years, which will just be okay for Kigali Amendment, to look already to the future and make these technologies awareness and capacity built in the country. So thank you very much for bringing the two important questions into the discussion. Thanks once again all our speakers for your contribution to Islamic Development Bank, and thank you very much to all our participants. Thank you for your time.